Hey y'all, it's Elizabeth Weimiller, and I know she's in the news a ton. We've all been kind of watching what's going on. Not surprising at the age of 96 that she passed away, but Queen Elizabeth II has left this world, gone to the next one. And while I wrote a Who's in the News article on her about 3 years ago, and I did look at her death when she died, and if you have been to my website and seen it, it's there. But I thought I would do a video of her life because I know people really enjoy the videos and they enjoy seeing the charts and they enjoy understanding them. So I'm going to take today, walk you through Queen Elizabeth II's chart and kind of what her chart shows about her life and who she was as a person. And for those of you interested, I will do King Charles as well. So drop a note in the comments if you're interested in King Charles. If I don't get a lot of interest, I may not do it because I'm always doing other people. But if you are, drop a note in the comments and I will work on that as well. I have written him and looked at his life in the written form, but I have not done a video yet because I just started doing videos not too long ago. So there's a lot more writing on my website than there are videos, working on the videos for this channel. So Queen Elizabeth II, she was born April 21st, 1926 at 2:40 a.m. in London, England. Note, I do Vedic astrology. It is the sidereal system, and I do use the Lahiri Ayanamsha. So that's the food for thought. As you can see, I use the South Indian chart. For those of you that are familiar, easy for me to say, it is, as I record this, Mercury retrograde as well. So bear with me on technology. But she was, when she was born, she wasn't technically fully as much in line to be Queen of England, but through a series of events, that did become her life path when her uncle abdicated and her dad was forced to step in as King of England. So she, at the time of death, had just celebrated her 70th year on the throne, which longest reigning monarch in the UK and of all the territories that the UK stands over. If we look at her chart, we can see that she is a Sagittarius ascendant. And really, overall, what this really says is she has a strong connection, you know, to her mother. She has a love of home. She has this optimism and a love of life. She can be, frugal with her money, and, her speech can be very strict and kind of like she can have a certain way that she speaks, but she could have a very passionate nature. But she may have had issues with her children at times with a Sagittarius ascendant. She did have a very sharp and keen intelligence, and she likely could have had issues with friends. And, from what we could see from what the media reports, for what it's worth, but we'll go with it, that, she could have kept her circle very close knit, especially in those she trusted and those who she looked to for advice. So, she can work well with her spouse as well as, having many business partnerships. She had a great respect and like true reverence for her father. And as we can see in her first house, she does have the node of the moon Ketu. And this can give her kind of that a bit of that elusive quality and kind of feeling that she's very hard to that people don't understand her and she can be hard to get to know. She likely, probably numerous times throughout her life, really felt that she didn't fit in anywhere. She was in this position, but she probably felt something was off. Ketu in the first can give, a thin body, especially in the younger years. And if we look back at pictures, we can see that she was always on the thinner side. She kind of stayed in pretty good shape with all the things she did. But, she likely really enjoyed exploring many different philosophies in search of understanding. It could have been, Ketu in the first could have brought separation from her father, and she did lose her father at the age of 25, just before turning 26, which is how she ascended to the throne, was with his death. But she could be very adaptable because she could be very action oriented in terms of her perspective, but her life probably had kind of many surprises and sudden happenings. I would tend to say, based on how her life went, that was very true. Her ascendant and Ketu are in the lunar mansion of Uttarashada, which can give her political or governmental leadership. And it can indicate that she can be bright, fun-loving, very popular, very devoted to friends, someone that's very modest, but also someone that could be very interested in learning, who enjoys reading to gain knowledge, and digging deep to find different things. So she could be someone that benefits through travel and could be going on frequent trips throughout her life. And she could be very devoted to her partner in terms of who she marries. I would say after 70 plus years of marriage, given some of the ups and downs that we saw in the media, I would say she was devoted to Philip. Moving on to her second house of Capricorn, she has Mars and Jupiter. Now, I will point out Mars and Jupiter are very tightly conjunct. This is going to make really kind of bring energy, enthusiasm, and dynamism into who she is. It can bring good money and status and position in leadership, especially being in Capricorn, the sign of business. It is important to note that Mars is at its exact degree of being the strongest it can be in a chart. This does make Mars her strongest planet. So with Mars in this position, she really has the ability to act quickly. She could be high energy. She could be generous. She could be hardworking. It could give her the ability to resist disease and aging. I would say passing away at the age of 96. She had pretty good resistance to disease. And she did, if you look at pictures, age pretty well. Jupiter is the opposite of Mars. Jupiter is at its weakest state, which means she's would have to work 3 times harder for that energy. But that is offset by that really strong Mars. So Mars uplifts that Jupiter and kind of cancels out the weakness of Jupiter. So this could bring her a desire to really care for the masses. It could indicate her as someone who follows the standards, who's practical. It could bring an energetic family life and make her an active and forceful speaker. She could be someone who was good with language, very polite, and could have good study skills. Jupiter and Mars are in the lunar mansion of Dhanishta, and this can really give material wealth. It can give ownership of property and real estate. As head of the royal family, for those that don't know, the Queen did have a lot of real estate holdings all over England and Scotland. So I do absolutely think we saw some of that play out. In her third house, we have Venus in Aquarius. So Venus in Aquarius, she could prefer it can indicate preferring more simple dresses and desires to have stability and love. She could have past tense. She could have taken kind of a more structured approach to love, because Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, so there could be more structured. She could have a partner who is responsible. She could be very adventurous and persuasive with good communication skills, which would be kind of important in her role. Venus is in the lunar mansion of Purva Bhadrapada, and this can indicate her getting money from the government. She could live a long life. Again, she did live till 96. And, she could be born into a wealthy family. I would argue there's probably not many wealthier families out there. So she could have also been really good at reading people, which, can be really important. There are people that really have that talent, which is helpful. Now, Venus, because it's the planet of love, it could be used to kind of look at Prince Philip, as he was her marriage partner. And if you think about, the lunar mansion that Venus is in for Vajrapada, indicating living a long life, Prince Philip did live till the age of 99. So it also could indicate, that he could marry into a wealthy family. And he did. He married into the British royal family. So while he had come out of a royal family himself, if you look at the history, it's an interesting story. Anyways, moving on to her fourth house. Her fourth house is Pisces, and she has Mercury in Pisces. This is Uranus. I'm not going to work with Uranus, but she does have Mercury in Pisces, and Mercury is weaker in Pisces, and it's her fourth house. So what this says is she's just going to have to work 3 times harder for that energy. is not a bad thing. It's just one of the lessons she needs to learn. Excuse me. So, you know, she could be very analytical. She could be mentally probing. She could be at times tactful and more open-minded. But, you know, under Queen Elizabeth, we did see that many things have shifted from traditional customs. If we look at, you know, her allowing Charles and Diana to get divorced, if we look at, you know, the fact that William married someone that was considered a commoner, and Kate Middleton. So there was a lot that, you know, kind of didn't happen in past monarchies that she kind of had to deal with shifting, and she dealt with, because of her reign, so many long-term things. But Mercury could really indicate learning through books, that she was very devoted to her family and could be very knowledgeable. You know, I think my guess would be, given Mercury's more mental state, that there were times, if you read about the relationship with her kids, that, you know, she was more mental at times in terms of overthinking, more logical, and she had a harder time showing emotions. And the fourth house can be a house kind of about showing emotions. It's naturally ruled by the moon when we look at the natural order of the zodiac. So we can see a little bit of how that may have played out at home. In her fifth house, she does have the sun in her fifth house of Aries, and her sun is also extremely strong and pretty close to its exact degree where it's the strongest in a chart. So this position can indicate that her firstborn would be a son. It was, because Charles was the firstborn, and that it can give her a bright mind and clear perception with a good sense of herself. It could indicate that her children will be very powerful and strong, because the fifth house is the house of children. And, you know, I would say, given one of her kids is the future, now at the time, future King of England, now the King of England, there you go. Like, but she could have a strong constitution. She could be a leader. She's someone that could take initiative. She could be a sharp thinker. She could enjoy, you know, sports. And, you know, she could be an authority figure. People could look to her. She could believe in higher values. And I would say that her sun being so strong in the lunar mansion of Ashwini, which is, the symbolism of it is a horse. And as many know, we do know that she was an avid horsewoman. She loved her horses. And as of 2013, which I haven't updated it since then, so work with me, but as of 2013, she had won over 1,600 races with horses in her stables. So Ashwini also made her a steady worker. It made her intelligent. It made her self-sufficient. It could make her a pioneer and courageous, but it could also give a very stubborn side. So I think the Ashwini is very interesting. Many people that have that either have a desire to go really fast, or they have a love of horses. So next up, we're going to look at her seventh house, which is Gemini. She has Pluto, which we're not going to talk about, and Rahu in her seventh house of Gemini. So this could give her a partner who is more restless, but is very adaptable, very intelligent, very youthful and talkative. It can give, you know, really a mind that's clever and may kind of come up with unprecedented ideas and activities. It could indicate that, you know, her husband could really benefit from non-traditional or foreign partnerships and could give, you know, end up with a partner who is foreign. So technically he was from another country. He did end up in England, but he was born in Greece, for those that don't know. And I did do an article on Prince Philip. There's my plug for that. It is on my website. Go check it out. Search Prince Philip. It's in there. And it's going to be in my upcoming book coming out. So there you go. Things to look forward to. So eighth house, she does have the moon in the eighth house of Cancer. And this, you know, the moon's in its own sign. Cancer, moon rules Cancer. This can give her kind of a sensitive and perceptive and emotionally responsible side. She can deal with family or emotional problems better than most, which I would say she's had to go through a few. She could be very forgiving, but also live a very comfortable life. I would say she lacked for nothing. She can be supportive of others while also receiving support from others. And my guess is that she may have had a bit of an intuitive side. No way of proving this. This is just a gut instinct I got, but it can kind of bring a shy side to her with Moon in the 8th house. And I think there was probably part of her that, for my opinion, didn't necessarily, she did the job, but she didn't necessarily see herself as Queen of England in her early years. Lastly, we have Saturn in the 12th house of Scorpio. And this can really give her an ability to work hard with a real powerful focus and ability to get things done. She may try to remain cheerful, especially externally, even though internally she may have been frustrated, upset, whatever the case may be. But she could follow the established path that was created for her. She was someone that would travel internationally, visit faraway places. She may not always have gotten the best sleep and could sometimes have woken up not feeling fully rested. Never heard anything, so who knows? But that is a potential with a malefic in the 12th house. It is the house of sleep. And if you have a malefic in your 12th, you can have trouble sleeping. So Saturn in the 12th could also have made her feel more isolated throughout her life, and kind of like she could have had difficulty really making friends while also being very self-conscious. So that is Queen Elizabeth's chart in a nutshell. She did have some yogas in her chart, and yogas just mean union. It's a joining of the planets. It's when they come together. And these can give, more indication of what to expect in a birth chart. So she had a Dana yoga, which really produced material wealth and money. Mars and Saturn do receive connection because Saturn is in Mars sign and Mars is in Saturn sign. So they act as if, they would act as if they're in their own signs, except that Mars is in its strongest sign. So we don't really change that energy. But they are made stronger when one's activated, the other is activated. She does have what's really called, what not really is called, it's called the Gajah Kesari Yoga, which really gives wealth, it gives intelligence, it can give virtue. And she had this kind of great business sense and financial prosperity because her Moon and Mars are opposite each other in this situation, which also creates a yoga. The other one is with Mercury being before the Sun. It does kind of give her an attitude that is more futuristic, it's more progressive, it can be more introverted, and it can be more intuitive. Let's look at quickly, at the time of her death, what was going on in transit, since that is what is top of mind for everybody right now. It's really, really interesting times. I do have the transits down here. So these were on September 8th, the day she passed away. What was going on? So one of the big ones I look at is Saturn was at 25 degrees of Capricorn, and it's 25 degrees, 57 minutes. It was retrograde, so it's moving backwards, but it is in conjunction with her natal Mars and her natal Jupiter. Jupiter does rule the first house of who she is, and Mars does rule her 12th house of liberation. So you mix Saturn, which can be an indicator of death and kind of endings, with the ruler of who you are and your person and your first house. And that can be an end to this life, and then final liberation. We really do consider moving, like passing away and going to the next life. Jupiter, she was also in her Jupiter Rahu dasha. So Jupiter was her Mahadasha and Rahu was her subdasha. And that Saturn being conjunct the Mahadasha ruler does indicate that this was a time that she could choose, to move on from this life, to release this life, and go to the next. With Rahu as her subdasha, that is in her 7th house, which is a Marika house. So Marika just means it's a killer house. The other one is the 2nd house, which is where actually Jupiter is natally in her chart as well. So you had 2 Marika houses coming into play, which we have seen in a fair amount of death charts in terms of triggering death with Saturn in there. her Mahadasha and Sabdasha are in a 6-8 relationship. So this is a very hard relationship in terms of 6-8 is very much dealing with hardships. It can be health issues. You can easily get through them. It doesn't mean just because the planets in the dasha, Mahadasha and Sabdasha are in a 6-8 that like you're gonna die. There's a lot more that goes into that, but it can be a harder relationship where you're working through more hardships. You're really having to get through those. The other planet that I look at in death charts, I never look at deaths pre-deaths. That's just not my thing. I think it does a disservice. So that's my opinion on it. Every astrologer has a different opinion, but I will look at it posthumously, after death, post-death, just to see what was going on and see what triggered stuff. So transiting Ketu was in her 11th house. And it was sending its energy to Venus, which is the ruler of her 6th house of health. And it was basically within a degree. So transiting Ketu was at the exact degree. Transiting Ketu was 21 degrees and sending its energy to the natal Venus. So sorry, totally was not functioning. So this could show her losing the battle to her health. Transiting Ketu is also sending its energy to her 3rd house, which is where Venus is, but the 3rd house is really her life force. So it can really indicate her having just lost her desire to go on. I will say since after Prince Philip died, she did really back away from the monarchy from what we could tell. She had more health issues. She started letting other top members of the royal family take over. So that was, could have been an indication, but there was a bit of that Ketu aspecting the 3rd life house, kind of that loss. So Ketu can be an indicator of loss. And I would say that's what happened. If you want to read all the full stuff, there's a little extra on Queen Elizabeth in the article on my website, elizabethweimiller.com. I will link it below the video for you. Also, if you're not part of my newsletter, be sure to sign up for my newsletter. It is free. It goes out once a month unless there is other special stuff going on. If Jupiter's changing signs or the nodes are changing signs or Saturn's changing signs, or, if something big happens, I don't spam you. I don't sell your information. I don't like getting spammed. I don't love a ton of emails in my inbox every day, so I know where you're coming from, so I don't do that. But it is a monthly email. I try to get it out a day or two before the start of the month. It includes sign predictions, kind of to give a broad sense of what's going on for you based on your rising sign or moon sign. It gives kind of who's in the news. It's an easy access place. So head on over there. It's where you get special deals, where discounts on readings sometimes. If you're interested in doing a reading, click below. I've clicked the link for you to schedule a reading as well. But anyways, that's Queen Elizabeth for you. I hope you enjoyed. And if you don't already, like and follow this page so that you get video updates. And if you haven't already, again, sign up for the newsletter or like and follow my blog so that you get the posts when they get posted, because I try to do videos, but I do a ton of writing as well. So stay tuned, see who comes up next, and yeah, enjoy. So I will see you in the next video.